Hi, it's Dana, the ingredient inspector from Will Talk with Closest to Homemade. This video is about an ingredient, high fructose corn syrup. What is high fructose corn syrup? Fructose is a type of sugar. Fructose is naturally found in fruits, vegetables, honey, and maple syrup. It is also a component of sugar. Sugar is a combination of fructose and glucose. Fructose is the sweetest natural sugar. High fructose corn syrup is a very sweet liquid made from corn. HFCS, the acronym for high fructose corn syrup, HFCS is corn syrup that has been processed with the assistance of an enzyme to convert some of the corn's other sugar into fructose, so it's high in fructose. High fructose corn syrup now exists in many processed foods and beverages. Many food and beverage products once made with sugar as a sweetener have switched to different forms of corn syrup, including high fructose. What are two of the key issues surrounding the consumption of high fructose corn syrup? The production of corn, the environmental issues, specifically around GMOs and glyphosate, and the consumption of corn, the health issues, particularly around glyphosate and high fructose corn syrup. So let's look at the production of corn and the issues surrounding that. Bulletproof by Mr. Dave Asprey. I don't know if you're familiar with him. He is the creator of the Bulletproof brand, coffee and brain octane oil, as well as several other products. And he's also the New York Times best-selling author. His most recent book, Headstrong. He does also these wonderful interviews with experts in different fields, and these have provided the foundation for the sources for this video. Particularly an interview he did with Dr. Don Huber, Why We Need to KO the GMO, and an interview with Dr. Stephanie Seneff on glyphosate toxicity. So thank you to Mr. Asprey and Dr. Huber and Dr. Seneff for this. What is a GMO? GMO stands for Genetically Modified Organism. GMOs are created through a process called gene splicing. DNA from different species are joined together. For example, a tomato given genes from a flounder and fish given cattle growth genes. What is Roundup Ready corn? Roundup Ready corn is genetically modified corn. This GMO corn is referred to as Roundup Ready corn because the corn has been genetically engineered by a chemical company to work in tandem with Roundup, which is also made by the chemical company. How much of U.S. corn is genetically modified? According to the U.S. Department of Agriculture, genetically modified corn are 92% of total U.S. corn acreage. The human physical dangers of GMOs are primarily associated with the ingredient glyphosate in Roundup. Glyphosate has been linked to gastrointestinal disorders, autism, dementia, insulin resistance, diabetes, depression, obesity, kidney failure, fatty liver, several different cancers, especially among farmers using glyphosate, autoimmune disease, endocrine disruption, antibiotic resistance, immunosuppression, infertility, neuron impairment, collagen disruption, non-Hodgkin's leukemia, lymphoma, Parkinson's disease, gluten sensitivity, multiple sclerosis, Alzheimer's, heart disease, and high blood pressure. According to Dr. Seneff at MIT, we're all being chronically poisoned by glyphosate every day. The environmental dangers of Roundup have been linked to bee colony collapse disorder, disappearing monarch butterflies, animal and insect bird deformities, increased plant and animal fungal diseases, weakened genetic structures of animals and plants, and soil contamination. So what is glyphosate? We know that glyphosate is a serious chronic toxin. That's been well established in peer-reviewed scientific articles. Dr. Don Huber. Glyphosate is a chelator. Glyphosate is an herbicide, and glyphosate is also an antibiotic. Glyphosate is a chelator. A chelator is a compound that can grab onto another element and change its physical characteristics without becoming part of that element. Glyphosate stimulates hormonal systems in the plant to act as chelators, which take out or immobilize copper, zinc, manganese, boron, iron, cobalt, nickel, calcium, magnesium, and other trace minerals. They immobilize those minerals so they're no longer available for the physiological functions that they regulate in the plant. You may have the mineral in the plant, but if it's chelated with glyphosate, it's not going to be available physiologically for you to use. The natural half-life of glyphosate can be anywhere from 1.5 years for as long as 22 years. Glyphosate is an herbicide. The herbicidal mode of action of glyphosate is through pathogenic action, not a direct phytotoxic effect on the plant. So when Roundup is used on GMO cornfields, pathogens are killed, but not the corn plant itself. That's where the genetic engineering comes in, because they engineered a plant that could tolerate the glyphosate. It keeps functioning, so you can now apply glyphosate directly to those plants that are protected because of the bacterial genes that have been put in. When you eat that genetically modified corn or sweet corn or canola, then you can also pick up those genes and carry the genetically engineered proteins in the blood. Glyphosate is an antibiotic. Unfortunately, like all antibiotics, it also kills vitally important beneficial soil bacteria and human gut bacteria. It can cause an overgrowth of the gut bacteria and disrupt the intestinal flora. It takes less than 1/10 of a part per million to be toxic to those beneficial microorganisms in our gut. Soybean oil is allowed to have 40 parts per million of glyphosate. This is 400 times greater than the 1/10 of a part per million. All of these diseases are just the manifestation of the power of glyphosate in eliminating all of those natural barriers and natural biological controls that we used to have built into our system that are now taken out because of this antibiotic activity of this herbicide. If you look at Andreas von Tiedemann research, he reported at the National Fusarium Head Blight Forum a couple years ago. He said it's not safe to even use straw or stubble for bedding now for our pigs and cattle because those toxins are produced in the roots and translocated up. So, 2 of the key issues surrounding the consumption of high fructose corn syrup. Let's take a look at the consumption of corn. What does high fructose corn syrup do in our bodies? Several studies have demonstrated that high fructose consumption has great obesogenic potential. Obesogenic means tends to cause obesity. It's associated with several metabolic complications. It negatively affects glucose metabolism, may contribute to the development of insulin resistance. Insulin resistance is a precursor to diabetes. It activates extremely harmful signaling pathways in liver tissue cells. It enables glycation, where the fructose bonds with collagen and creates AGEs, advanced glycation end products. It increases the levels of uric acid in the body, which contributes to diseases like gout. Promotes the creation of fat cells, the accumulation of fat in liver cells, and creates alterations in lipid profiles, the circulating and the liver profiles. Lipids are fatty acids that are insoluble in water. These last 2 points that focus on the creation and accumulation of fat in liver cells, I just would like to take a closer look at that. From Harvard Health Publications, From Fructose to Fat. According to Harvard Medical School, the entry of fructose into the liver kicks off a series of complex chemical transformations. One remarkable change is that the liver uses fructose, a carbohydrate, to create fat. Give the liver enough fructose and tiny fat droplets begin to accumulate in liver cells. Virtually unknown before 1980, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease now affects up to 30% of adults in the United States, and between 70% and 90% of those who are obese or who have diabetes. The books you see there that just popped up are from Dr. Mark Hyman. According to Dr. Mark Hyman, fatty liver used to be only in alcoholics. Now we see it in little kids because they're drinking soda. If you're having high fructose corn syrup, it's a bad news game. The increase in consumption of HFCS has a temporal relation to the epidemic of obesity. HFCS is sweeter and cheaper than products made with cane sugar. This allowed the average soda size to balloon from 8 ounces to 20 ounces, with little financial cost to the manufacturers, but great human costs of increased obesity, diabetes, and chronic disease. High fructose corn syrup has been banned by Whole Foods, who cites it as unacceptable in food. What are some sweeteners that are closest to homemade? Since this is about high fructose corn syrup, which is a sweetener, are there any sweeteners that are closest to homemade? These include cane sugar, which is historically what sugar was always made from, until we discovered a way to get sugar from what is termed sugar beets. So cane sugar was our original sugar. Monk fruit extract. Raw honey. The raw is very important there because if it's been processed, then it has different characteristics. So we're really talking about raw honey as being closest to homemade. And stevia, which is a plant. These are all very naturally sweet. So that's the ingredient inspector from We'll Talk with closest to homemade on high fructose corn syrup, so you can make excellent decisions about what is best for you. The Ingredient Inspector on Twitter and YouTube, and the blog is at ingredientinspector.org. Share with the ones you love.